Ghost stories. Those are always gripping. From the stories you told around the campfires when you were a kid to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, everybody likes a ghost story. Well, New Orleans, you really can't throw a stick without running into some haunted place or some hot spot or something that has a ghost story attached to it. And the two that stick out in my mind the most, it's a place that sounds a little innocuous. It is the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum. Okay, pharmacies are drugstores. One, why would they have a museum about that? I suppose it could be interesting to some. But there's a little bit of the history behind it. It started way back in the early years of the city when they were dealing with a horrible yellow fever epidemic. And yellow fever was a disease that it started off with like a cold or a flu, but it would then proceed to attack your insides. One of the things it did was attack your liver, which caused you to jaundice and turn yellow, hence the yellow fever. And then it would just basically attack the rest of your insides and you died a painful death. Well, they didn't have a lot of, medical professionals back in those days. So there was one old fellow who, was very beloved. He was a pharmacist, he was a doctor, and he would treat people. And he came in and he helped them deal with the yellow fever epidemic. And he had his practice and he worked for a number of years. Well, he obviously got, too old and he had to retire. So he sold it to another fellow, I believe, a pharmacist that had come from France. Much younger and very skilled. And, while not as popular as the old man had been, soon established himself as, a very competent physician and so forth. And there was something not quite right about him. Well, apparently from accounts that we discovered since then, he would be involved with performing medical experiments. People that were coming in for different diseases, he would treat them. He would do surgeries on them. He would do medical examinations and so forth. And they didn't always submit willingly to these. They were not always necessary. The victims were not always dead. He would allegedly hang on to the bodies for a while, conducting experiments and everything for some time after they had given up the ghost. And then when things got, really bad, and he even couldn't keep them around, he would put them in a wagon and at night take them out and dump them in the Mississippi. This went on for a long time, and he racked up quite a number of deaths, and they found out about it from his journals where he described doing horrible things to the bodies, removing fetuses from the mothers, keeping them in formaldehyde jars, reading them bedtime stories at night so they wouldn't be lonely. Yeah, all kinds of things. Well, he finally passed away, but he supposedly still haunts that area. And men that come in to go through the museum often will report feeling cold hands as they're going down the stairs trying to push them. Women going in to see the museum often talk about cold hands, fondling and groping them and touching them in places that, a gentleman wouldn't touch a lady. I didn't go in there. I ended up going past it one day and had a very interesting experience that I've never had happen before. Supposedly, ghosts will draw from electrical sources like batteries, car batteries, camera batteries, all sorts of other things, and they will cause electrical things to malfunction. I was walking by the pharmacy museum during my stay there, and I pulled out my phone because I needed to check Google Maps to find out where this particular restaurant was that I was looking for and how far away I was. Pull it out of my pocket and I take a look at it, and it is on emergency lockdown. and it says cancel or erase data and settings. Okay, this is the only way I'm getting my phone back. Why is this happening? And I realized it probably had something to do with where I was. I'm thinking, well, there's nothing doing. I'm going to have to do it. And I was about to push saying erase data and settings when I heard a voice behind me say, no, that's what he wants you to do. Just shut it off. Go back to your hotel room. You'll be fine. There was nobody there. Well, I figured I couldn't be any worse off shutting off my phone than erasing everything, so I shut it off. I put my phone back in my pocket, and I went about my business. And about half hour, 45 minutes later, I go back to my hotel room. I turn my phone back on. Boom, no problem. And it's worked fine ever since. Another place that is a hotbed of paranormal activity, according to those that believe in ghosts and ghost stories, is the Lalaurie Mansion. Madame Lalaurie was a notorious serial killer. She was a very sadistic woman. I'm not slandering her because, to be absolutely honest, I haven't read anything about her that was very good or very friendly. And she was also, by today's standards, she would be a billionaire. You know, her fortune back in the 17 and 1800s was in the millions, which means she would be right up there with, Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk today. And she figured that her wealth could help her get away with a lot of things because nobody was going to want to bother her. She was, had a lot of influence with the courts, with the legislature, with the city, with the police. I'm untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. A fire at her home attracted the attention of the authorities, and some of the elderly slaves were telling them, we're fine, where the fire was. You need to get over to the building next door and go into the attic and find out, rescue those people. Well, Madame Lalaurie tried stopping them. Nothing would do. They were convinced that, possibly the fire had spread there. And since New Orleans was a wooden city and had already gone through two devastating fires, they were not going to let it, happen a third time. They forced their way in and found a scene of indescribable horror. Newspaper accounts said that the bodies that were in there weren't human. They were just twitching skeletons. And this outraged the city of New Orleans so much that Lalaurie and her family had to flee. And I guess they left just ahead of an angry mob that proceeded to destroy her mansion. Well, to this day, it is considered one of the most cursed places in New Orleans. Other businesses, etc., that have tried to set up there have not lasted very long. I think at one point it was a boarding school and finishing school, and that didn't last very long. People would leave. People that have owned it never owned it for long. People that stay there never stay there for very long. And anybody associated with it, you usually have a run of bad luck. And when you go there, it was supposed to be vacant, but lights were suddenly on. It was kind of interesting, and it was really creepy when you walked by. And the thing was, you could feel it before you got there because there's no placard on the outside that identifies it for what it was. But I was not that familiar with New Orleans. And if you ask me, if I took a look at any one of the buildings, each one looks the same. But you could kind of feel there was something there. Another place was the Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop, which is now a bar. It's one of the oldest buildings still standing in New Orleans. It was an actual blacksmith shop, and it was run by Jean Lafitte's brother, who obviously did the usual blacksmith stuff of making tools and horseshoes and farm implements and everything, but he also made stuff for the pirate ships. He also made musket balls and all kinds of other things. Well, it was a place that Jean Lafitte liked to hang out. He definitely likes to hang out there now because it has been turned into a bar. And there's no smoking in there, but sometimes you will spot a man smoking a cigar, and when you confront him about it, stories go, he disappears. Ladies, if you go there, I will give you a heads up. Unlike the Pharmacy Museum, where the man tries to grope and fondle and be really crude and offensive, John Lafitte likes to give a little pinch on the butt. Guys, don't worry about it. But those were three of the haunted places that I remember the most, or that stand out the most. Of course, the last one was the first haunted place that I went to when somebody told me about. That was the home of William Faulkner. And it's in Pirates Alley near the St. Louis Cathedral. And that was where he wrote his very first novel, Soldier's Pay. And supposedly you can still see his spirit there. You can smell his pipe. Got a lot of his personal effects. When I was there, I didn't smell anything. Of course, I had my mask on because, some of the shop owners require you to remain fully masked when you use their establishments. And almost got into a little trouble working my camera trying to get some pictures to see if I could pick up any anomalies. But I also wanted pictures of, the inside of William Faulkner's house. So that's definitely a place where you can get into the spirit of New Orleans and the spirit of William Faulkner, even if you don't necessarily meet the spirit of William Faulkner.